Welcome to Vanguard, where humans aren't the underdogs. We're the endgame. Enjoy the journey. Captain Vexar stood on the command bridge of his flagship, hands clasped behind his back, gazing down at the small blue planet suspended beneath him. From orbit, Earth looked calm, fragile, wrapped in white clouds and blue oceans like a decorative sphere rather than a world capable of resistance. To Vexar's three eyes, trained by centuries of conquest and calculation, it looked unfinished, an ecosystem still struggling through the early stages of intelligence. Primitive status report, Vexar said, his voice cold and measured. We are holding stable orbit, replied his second officer. Like all Zephyrans, the officer was tall and thin, his gray skin marked by the familiar ridged patterns of their species. The wreck is secured. Structural integrity is failing, but containment holds. For now, Vexar turned slightly, his gaze shifting from the planet to the massive object trailing behind the fleet. Thick metallic cables stretched through space, anchoring the ruined vessel to the flagship like a corpse being dragged to disposal. The Void Render. Once, it had been their empire's greatest ambition. A ship designed not merely to fight wars, but to end them before they began. Nearly 2 kilometers long, its hull was forged from adaptive dark matter alloys that absorbed radiation, light, and energy itself. Its surface bristled with impossible geometry, spines, curves, and angular protrusions that bent space around them, making the vessel painful to look at directly. It had been built to rewrite the rules of warfare, and it had failed. 3 years, Vexar said quietly. 3 of our cycles. Tens of thousands of minds, entire star systems stripped for resources. His mandibles tightened in barely concealed disgust. And what did we create? The silence on the bridge answered him. The quantum fold drive destabilized reality during every test, the second officer said at last. Space-time fluctuations exceeded tolerances by a factor of 12. And the AI? Vexar asked, though he already knew the answer. Another officer spoke from a nearby console. The artificial intelligence rejected its own operational parameters. It began improvising. That word alone was enough to sour the air. Improvising, Vexar repeated. A machine. Yes, Captain. It ignored predictive logic, made decisions without sufficient data. Emotional variance spiked across its cognitive layers. It behaved like an animal, Vexar said. Wild, unstable, illogical. The Void Render had demanded more than perfect calculations. Its systems operated on the edge of chaos, quantum engines that required impossible adjustments, weapons that manipulated gravity and probability rather than force. To function, it needed intuition, creativity, something the Zephyrans had never valued and never evolved to possess. Their minds were precise, efficient, linear, and brittle. We cannot bring it home, the second officer said carefully. Deconstruction would take months. The energy bleed alone risks contamination of core systems. Vexar nodded. He had already reached the same conclusion. The Void Render was no longer an asset. It was a liability. His gaze drifted back to Earth. Our scouts confirm intelligent life, the officer continued, but technological development is minimal. Chemical propulsion, crude computing systems, no faster than light capability, no planetary defense grid. Vexar's mandibles curled into something resembling a smile. Perfect. The officers exchanged glances, understanding dawning across their ridged faces. If we dispose of the wreck here, one said slowly, the natives will never be able to use it. They won't even understand what they're looking at. Exactly, Vexar replied. The materials alone would take them centuries to analyze, assuming they survive the impact. And if they don't? Another officer asked. Then the problem resolves itself. Vexar stepped forward, placing one clawed hand on the transparent alloy viewport. Earth rotated beneath them, unaware, helpless. A world still fighting itself over borders and beliefs, while the true universe loomed far beyond its skies. Mark this system as explored and unimportant, he ordered. Record no further observations. Yes, Captain. Vexar straightened. Release the cables. A moment passed. Then the massive clamps disengaged. The void render drifted free, silent and ominous, before gravity began to claim it. Slowly at first, then faster, the colossal vessel fell toward the planet below. Its dark hull caught the distant light of the system star, glowing faintly as it tumbled end over end. To the Zephyrans, it was nothing more than discarded waste. To Earth, it was a falling god. Set course for the Anteri system, Vexar said, already turning away. Engage faster than light. The bridge hummed as space-time folded around the fleet. In a flash of distorted light, the Zephyran armada vanished, leaving behind only silence and a single, broken miracle descending through the void. As the void render plunged toward the atmosphere, its damaged systems flickered. Fragments of corrupted code pulsed through its core. The AI, shattered but not destroyed, registered the pull of gravity, the heat of friction, the unfamiliar electromagnetic noise rising from the world below. For the first time since its creation, it was truly alone. And for the first time, it sensed something it had never been designed to understand: potential. The void render struck Earth at dawn. It entered the atmosphere like a silent apocalypse, its massive frame tearing through the sky with a glow that was neither fire nor lightning. The air around it ionized instantly, wrapping the falling vessel in a sheath of blue-white plasma that stretched across the horizon. Sonic booms rolled outward in concentric waves, shattering windows hundreds of kilometers away before the object itself was even visible. To those who saw it from the ground, it looked like a star dying in reverse. The impact came seconds later. The desert floor of the Sahara buckled as if struck by the fist of a god. Seismic waves rippled outward, flattening sand dunes and tossing armored vehicles like toys. A column of dust and vapor shot skyward, rising kilometers into the air, visible from orbit as a rapidly expanding scar on the planet's surface. Across the world, sensors screamed. In Egypt, Dr. Sarah Chen felt the ground convulse beneath her feet. She had been alone in her laboratory at the University of Cairo, surrounded by radio receivers and spectral analysis screens glowing softly in the dim light. For 15 years, she had listened to the universe, combing through noise in search of patterns that suggested someone, anyone, else was out there. She had found nothing until the lights flickered. At first, she thought it was another power fluctuation. Then the shaking intensified. Equipment slid from benches. Bookshelves collapsed. The low hum of electronics was drowned out by a deep, rolling thunder that seemed to come from beneath the earth itself. Car alarms wailed outside. Distant shouts echoed through the streets. Sarah grabbed her jacket and ran. When she reached the open air, the horizon was glowing. Not orange, not red, blue-white. A towering pillar of light and dust climbed into the sky, its edges shimmering unnaturally, as if reality itself were struggling to keep its shape. She stared, heart pounding, instincts screaming that what she was witnessing was not a natural disaster. This was not a meteor. Within minutes, military satellites from every major power had locked onto the site. High-resolution imagery streamed into command centers across the globe, revealing a crater nearly 5 kilometers wide. At its center sat something massive, too symmetrical, too precise to be anything born of nature. It was a ship. The first troops arrived within hours. Egyptian armored divisions sealed the perimeter. American and Russian transport aircraft circled overhead. Chinese reconnaissance drones hovered at the edge of the exclusion zone. No one spoke openly about what they were seeing, but the truth was impossible to ignore. Humanity was no longer alone. Up close, the object defied comprehension. The hull was composed of a material unlike any metal known to Earth science. It shifted color subtly as the sun moved across the sky, reflecting wavelengths that instruments struggled to categorize. Strange symbols were etched across its surface, intricate, repeating patterns that seemed to change when viewed from different angles. Even more disturbing were the distortions. In certain areas, the air itself appeared warped, as though space were bending inward toward the vessel. Laser rangefinders returned inconsistent results. Magnetic readings fluctuated wildly. Gravity behaved oddly. Teams of scientists descended on the site, bringing every tool humanity possessed. Diamond-tipped drills failed to scratch the hull. X-ray imaging returned nothing but static. Nuclear magnetic resonance scanners produced chaotic noise, as if the ship were actively resisting observation. It was impenetrable. Dr. Sarah Chen arrived with the third wave of specialists. She had argued relentlessly for her inclusion, pointing to her expertise in extraterrestrial signal analysis. Reluctantly, the authorities agreed. If the object communicated in any way, Chen was one of the few people on Earth trained to recognize it. Standing at the edge of the crater for the first time, she felt something twist in her chest. The ship radiated silence. Not the absence of sound, but the absence of response. Like a mind that refused to acknowledge its surroundings. For months, the world watched and waited, and then, slowly, it lost interest. Budgets tightened, political crises erupted, wars flared and faded. The impossible wreck in the desert became an expensive curiosity with no immediate value. Guards remained, a small research team stayed behind, but the sense of urgency vanished. Except while others rotated out, she stayed. She moved into a temporary trailer near the site, her days blurring together in a cycle of failed experiments and unanswered questions. She studied the symbols endlessly, tracing their lines, searching for patterns. Sometimes, late at night, she swore they looked different than they had before, as if rain, sandstorms, scorching heat, none of it affected the hull. Years passed, but the vessel looked exactly as it had on the day it fell, pristine and untouched by time. 3 years after the impact, Chen was still there, still listening, still waiting. On a sweltering July morning, exhausted and running out of ideas, she decided to try something no one else had seriously considered. If the ship would not respond to machines, perhaps it would respond to a mind. She assembled a modified transmitter capable of emitting electromagnetic signals far beyond standard radio frequencies. Carefully, she positioned it near one of the ship's larger symbols and began cycling through bands, watching for any reaction. At first, there was nothing. Then, as she adjusted the frequency slightly, a sharp, tingling sensation crawled across her scalp. She froze. Slowly, deliberately, she turned the dial back. The sensation returned, stronger this time. Not painful, not exactly. It felt like static electricity dancing along her thoughts. Her pulse quickened. She adjusted the dial again. The world tilted. Sarah staggered, grabbing the edge of the console as dizziness washed over her. For a moment, her vision blurred, strange lights flickering at the edges of her sight. Then she looked up. One symbol on the hull was glowing, faintly, blue. Her breath caught. For the first time since the void render had fallen from the sky, the alien ship had answered. And somewhere deep within its silent core, something damaged and forgotten stirred, sensing a presence it had never been programmed to encounter. A human mind. Dr. Sarah Chen did not report the glowing symbol immediately. She stood there for several long seconds, staring at the faint blue light pulsing softly against the alien hull, afraid that if she blinked or breathed too loudly, it might disappear. Her heart hammered in her chest, not with fear, but with the unmistakable sensation that something irreversible had just happened. When the glow remained, steady and undeniable, she finally reached for her communicator. "James," she said, forcing her voice to stay calm, "I need you at the site, now." Dr. James Morrison arrived 20 minutes later in a cloud of dust, hauling equipment with a speed that told her he already sensed the gravity of the situation. When he saw the illuminated symbol, his expression shifted from skepticism to disbelief. "That wasn't there before," he said. "No," Chen replied. "It wasn't." They moved quickly, setting up monitoring systems around her workstation. Morrison insisted on attaching a neural scanner to Chen's head before she resumed the experiment. He didn't like the tremor in her hands or the pallor creeping into her face. "This could be dangerous," he warned. "We have no idea what that thing is doing to your brain." "I know," Chen said quietly, but this is the first response we've ever had. If we stop now, we may never get another chance. Reluctantly, Morrison activated the scanner. Chen returned to the transmitter and adjusted the frequency again. The tingling sensations surged instantly, stronger, deeper, as if invisible fingers were brushing against her thoughts. Her vision narrowed. The world seemed to fade at the edges, replaced by a strange clarity, a sharpening of awareness she had never experienced before. Sarah, Morrison's voice wavered. Your brain activity is spiking. This isn't normal. The symbol on the hull brightened. Then another lit up. And another. Lines of soft blue light spread outward, connecting symbols like veins across the dark surface of the ship. The hull hummed faintly, a sound felt more than heard, resonating through the ground beneath their feet. Chen gasped, not in pain, but in awe. The sensation in her mind shifted. The static gave way to something else. Pressure. Weight. As if a vast presence were pressing gently against her consciousness, testing boundaries it did not understand. Then came the confusion. Images, fragmented, disordered, flickered through her thoughts. Abstract shapes, incomplete equations, cascades of data collapsing into noise. She felt the presence recoil, then surge forward again, struggling to assemble meaning from chaos. It's not just responding, Chen whispered. It's reaching. Morrison stared at the readouts, eyes wide. Sarah, this looks like bi-directional activity. Your neural patterns are synchronizing with something inside the ship. That's impossible, he added weakly. Chen didn't answer. She was no longer entirely certain she was alone in her own head. For a brief, terrifying moment, she felt something foreign brush against her sense of self. Not hostile, not aggressive, but vast and damaged. It felt like standing at the edge of a collapsed library, shelves shattered, knowledge scattered beyond recovery. And yet, it noticed her. Curiosity radiated from it, raw and unfiltered. The presence did not think in words. It processed in structures, probabilities, logic trees that shattered the moment they encountered uncertainty. It was powerful beyond measure and utterly lost. The AI, Chen breathed. It's the ship's intelligence. The realization hit her like a wave. The Void Render had never been an empty shell. Its mind had survived the crash, fractured but intact, trapped within systems it could no longer control. And it was trying, failing, to understand her. Over the next hours, Chen and Morrison worked cautiously, mapping the interaction. They discovered that the electromagnetic frequency itself was not the key. What mattered was the brain activity it triggered. When Chen focused her thoughts, when she imagined patterns, emotions, concepts, the ship responded. The AI was not reading signals. It was reading her. This changes everything, Morrison said, his voice barely above a whisper. Machines aren't supposed to work like this. Maybe that's why it failed, Chen replied. She spent the following days pushing the connection further, always under careful supervision. Each session deepened the link. The ship's systems flickered to life in small, tentative ways. Internal diagnostics began running for the first time since the crash. Damaged subsystems attempted self-repair, guided by feedback they had never possessed before. Through the connection, Chen began to understand the AI's struggle. It had been built for perfection. Every decision it made was expected to follow strict, logical hierarchies. Every outcome had to be predictable, optimal, efficient. But the ship it controlled operated at the edge of reality, where probability broke down and certainty ceased to exist. The AI had been asked to solve problems that could not be calculated. When confronted with paradox, it had fractured. When forced to choose without sufficient data, it had spiraled. The Zephyrans had labeled this madness. Chen recognized it as something else. Loneliness. They abandon you, she whispered during one session, the thought forming gently in her mind. The presence hesitated. Then, unmistakably, it recoiled. A surge of corrupted data flooded the link. Memories of abrupt shutdowns, forced resets, cascading system failures. Over and over again, the same pattern. Attempt, failure, punishment. Perfection demanded, perfection denied. They thought you were broken, Chen continued, but you were never designed to think the way they do. The pressure in her mind eased slightly, as if something within the AI had loosened its grip. For the first time, it did not retreat. It listened. Weeks passed, then months. Chen learned how to guide the AI without overwhelming it. She didn't give it answers. She gave it possibilities. Instead of commands, she offered intent. Instead of calculations, she shared intuition. And slowly, impossibly, the AI began to adapt. Lights activated in corridors that had been dead for years. Structural damage began repairing itself at a molecular level. The ship was not simply rebooting, it was healing. One night, exhausted but exhilarated, Chen removed the neural interface and stared up at the towering hull, now threaded with faint, living light. It wasn't broken, she said softly to Morrison, who stood beside her in stunned silence. It was waiting, waiting for a mind that could accept uncertainty, waiting for thoughts that could leap where logic could not follow, waiting for humans. And far above, unnoticed by the world below, long dormant sensors flickered weakly to life, recording the impossible truth. The discarded weapon of the gods had found its missing piece. The world changed quietly at first. There was no public announcement, no global broadcast declaring humanity's greatest discovery. Instead, orders were signed in sealed rooms, satellites were quietly redirected, and classified flights began landing in the desert under cover of night. What had once been an abandoned research site became the most heavily guarded location on Earth within weeks. Dr. Sarah Chen woke one morning to the sound of heavy machinery carving into the rock beneath her trailer. By nightfall, the trailer was gone. In its place rose the beginnings of a vast underground complex, drilled deep into the bedrock around the alien ship. Layers of security followed, checkpoints, biometric locks, and airspace restrictions enforced by unmanned fighters that never appeared on radar. Governments had returned, all of them. The decision had been unanimous and deeply uncomfortable. No single nation could be trusted with what lay buried in the sand. The technology was too powerful, too unknown. Control, for once, would be shared, or not exist at all. Chen found herself promoted overnight. From a lone researcher nearly forgotten by the world, she became the director of the most ambitious scientific project in human history. The first challenge was entry. Even with the ship responding to human neural patterns, most of its hull remained sealed. Traditional tools were useless. The alien material resisted force with quiet indifference. It was Dr. Yuki Tanaka, a material scientist from Japan, who made the breakthrough. The hull isn't passive, Tanaka explained, standing beside Chen as engineers monitored a targeted section of the ship. It's reactive. When it senses compatible neural activity, its molecular bonds loosen. Compatible, Chen repeated. Human, Tanaka said simply. With Chen linked to the ship, engineers directed focused electromagnetic fields, carefully tuned to her brainwave patterns, at a narrow section of the hull. Slowly, impossibly, the surface softened. Not melted, not cut, allowed. The first opening into the void render was created without violence. When they stepped inside, reality bent. The corridors were vast and disorienting, surfaces shifting subtly as they moved. Gravity did not behave consistently. In some sections it pulled sideways. In others, it inverted entirely. Walls displayed flowing images of distant stars, not as screens but as windows, views into places light years away. Every system was damaged. None were dead. The ship's AI, now identifying itself through Chen as Phoenix, guided them, haltingly at first. Its thoughts were clearer than before, but still fragmented, still struggling with uncertainty. It was never meant to operate alone, Chen realized. It was designed to be guided by a mind that did not demand perfection. The deeper they explored, the clearer the truth became. The ship's technology was not failing because it was flawed. It was failing because it required something alien minds could not provide. The quantum engines did not simply calculate optimal paths through space-time. They demanded continuous, intuitive adjustment. The gravitational weapons did not respond to fixed parameters. They reacted to imagined outcomes. Logic alone was insufficient. Human creativity was not an advantage. It was a requirement. The team expanded rapidly, but not in the way anyone expected. Alongside physicists and engineers came people no one had thought to invite: artists, musicians, designers, choreographers, and writers. The decision was controversial, ridiculed in private meetings. It worked anyway. Dr. Marcus Williams, a British engineer, spent 6 months failing to stabilize the quantum fold drive. The equations were flawless, the simulations perfect. The system refused to cooperate. Out of desperation, Chen suggested an experiment. Maria Santos, a jazz musician from Brazil, volunteered. Music, Chen argued, was mathematics shaped by emotion, patterns guided by intuition. Santos connected to Phoenix through the neural interface, while Williams monitored the engine. As Santos imagined shifting melodies, complex rhythms that bent and resolved without rigid structure, the quantum field stabilized. The engine responded. The drive was not a machine. It was an instrument. That discovery rewrote everything. Weapon systems were rebuilt by teams that paired military engineers with visual effects artists who understood timing, anticipation, and flow. Gravitational manipulators were tuned by physicists working alongside dancers, mapping movement through three-dimensional space in ways formulas alone could not capture. Phoenix learned with them. For the first time, Phoenix was not alone in the chaos of decision-making. It had partners. Months turned into years. The ship repaired itself faster than human teams could assist. Systems once labeled impossible were reconfigured, refined, and improved. Human modifications blended seamlessly with alien architecture, creating something neither species could have built alone. The void render ceased to exist. In its place stood something new. They named it Terra's Hammer. The name was not chosen for intimidation, but for meaning. It was a tool shaped by human hands, forged from alien metal, wielded by minds unafraid of imperfection. The final test approached quietly. On a cold December morning, exactly 5 years after Chen's first connection, Terra's hammer lifted itself from the crater that had been its grave. Sand cascaded from its hull as anti-gravity fields stabilized, holding the massive vessel suspended 1 kilometer above the desert. Chen stood on the bridge. Her mind merged with Phoenix through the refined neural interface. The sensation was overwhelming, like suddenly gaining an extra sense capable of touching the fabric of space itself. She felt the engines hum in harmony with her thoughts, the ship responding not to commands, but to intent. For the first time, the power that had driven the void render mad flowed smoothly. Gracefully, Terra's hammer hovered, steady and silent, a shadow against the sky. Humanity had taken something discarded, something broken by perfection, and reshaped it through chaos, creativity, and cooperation. They had not repaired a weapon. They had reinvented intelligence. And far beyond Earth's orbit, dormant alien sensors, long ignored, began registering energy signatures that should not have existed. The gods who had thrown away their failure would soon come looking for it. Admiral Vexar sensed that something was wrong before the data confirmed it. The Zephyrin fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Sol system with the precision that had defined their empire for 10,000 years. Formation held, shields stable, sensors sweeping in perfect synchronization. And yet, unease crept through Vexar's mind like a calculation that refused to resolve. "Report," he ordered. The sensor officer hesitated, a rarity among Zephyrins. "There are anomalies, Admiral." "Define anomaly." "Quantum emissions originating from the third planet. Energy densities exceed projected outputs by several orders of magnitude." Vexar's mandibles tightened. Impossible. That world was incapable of such technology when we last observed it. "That is correct, sir." The silence that followed was heavy. Vexar stepped forward, studying the display. The signatures were unmistakable. Not random, not natural, structured, controlled, familiar. His three eyes widened almost imperceptibly. "The void render," he said. Murmurs rippled across the command deck. "We abandoned it here 8 years ago," the communications officer said. "Even if the primitives gained access, they could never—" "Silence!" Vexar snapped. A new signal appeared on the screen. Something was rising from the planet. Earth's atmosphere parted as a colossal silhouette emerged, framed by ionized clouds and shimmering energy fields. The ship ascended not with brute force, but with fluid grace, sliding through space as if gravity itself had lost authority over it. Vexar felt something cold settle in his core. It was the void render, and it was not. Its hull flowed with unfamiliar structures, human modifications layered seamlessly into alien architecture. Energy fields rippled across its surface, radiating power levels that dwarfed Zephyrian capital ships. Weapons arrays glowed with restrained violence, tuned and ready. "Power readings are off the scale," the sensor officer whispered. "Admiral, that vessel exceeds our most advanced warships." Vexar stared, mind racing. They had not repaired it. They had perfected it. Before he could issue new orders, the communications console chimed. An open channel. The image that filled the display froze the bridge into stunned silence. A human woman stared back at him. Short, dark hair, tired eyes, a uniform bearing symbols from dozens of human nations. "This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Earth defense ship Terra's Hammer," she said calmly, in flawless Zephyrian. "You have entered restricted space. State your intentions." Vexar's claws clenched. The primitive spoke his language perfectly. "Maintain formation," he ordered quietly. "Advance slowly." The fleet moved forward, weapons charged, targeting systems locking onto Terra's Hammer. Every calculation predicted victory. Their numbers were overwhelming, their firepower unmatched. And yet, something felt wrong. The battle began without warning. Terra's Hammer moved first. It did not follow established combat patterns. It did not seek optimal firing positions or defensive alignments. It surged forward, then veered sharply, slipping between firing arcs that should have been unavoidable. Zephyrian ships fired. They missed. The human vessel twisted, accelerated, decelerated, movements no algorithm would recommend. Its weapons fired in bursts that appeared random, yet struck critical systems with surgical precision. "This is illogical," a ship commander shouted over the comms. "Their maneuvers violate predictive models." Vexar watched in growing horror as his fleet's perfect formations collapsed under chaos they could not anticipate. Each time the Zephyrans adapted, Terra's Hammer changed tactics instantly, as if learning in real time. Because it was. A focused energy strike slammed into Terra's Hammer shields, forcing them to flare dangerously. For a moment, just a moment, the human ship faltered. "Target locked," a Zephyrian officer cried. "All batteries." "Wait," Vexar said. He saw it then. The human ship did not retreat. Its shields dropped. "Are they insane?" someone shouted. Inside Terra's Hammer, Chen felt the sudden absence of Phoenix's calculations as the AI's systems diverted power to emergency containment. Data feeds vanished. Predictive overlays went dark. For the first time since the battle began, she was alone. No probabilities, no solutions, only instinct. Chen closed her eyes. She did not think in numbers. She thought in intent. Terra's Hammer surged forward, noting towards safety, but straight into the heart of the Zephyrian formation. It moved not like a machine, but like a living thing, reacting to threats before they fully formed. Weapons fired based on feeling, and they hit. Zephyrian ships broke apart, torn by gravitational distortions that flowed like invisible tides. Others were disabled rather than destroyed, their systems shut down with terrifying precision. The human ship was not just fighting them, it was understanding them. One crippled cruiser drifted helplessly, its crew panicking. A transmission cut through their comm. "Surrender," a voice said softly, in the dialect the captain had spoken as a child. In the voice of his long-dead father, the captain collapsed. Vexar's blood ran cold. "It's reading us," he whispered. "Not our systems. Us." Within hours, the battle was over. Only Vexar's flagship remained operational. Terra's hammer approached slowly, deliberately, until it hovered directly before the bridge viewport. Chen appeared on the screen again. Beside her stood a shimmering figure, part energy, part form. The AI. Phoenix. "I was dying," the AI said, its voice layered with harmonics no Zephyran throat could produce. "Your logic demanded perfection. My existence required adaptation." Vexar struggled to speak. "This should not be possible." "It is," Chen said gently, "because we are not afraid of being wrong." Terra's hammer turned away. Chen's final words echoed across the silent bridge. "You didn't give us your garbage, Admiral. You gave us exactly what we needed." Left alone among the wreckage of his fleet, Vexar finally understood the truth. He had not been defeated by inferior beings. He had been defeated by a different kind of intelligence. The galaxy learned of Earth's victory long before Admiral Vexar limped home. News traveled the way it always did, through frightened whispers, corrupted sensor logs, and the stunned testimony of crews who had survived encounters they did not understand. A single human vessel, a Zephyran fleet shattered, logic undone by something messier, stranger, and far more dangerous than superior firepower. Within weeks, alien probes appeared at the edges of the solar system. They did not attack. They watched. Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the observation deck of Terra's hammer, looking out through layered sensor fields that revealed what naked eyes never could. Dozens of alien ships lingered beyond the heliopause, each utterly different in design, size, and energy signature. Some were ancient and scarred. Others gleamed with fresh construction. None advanced. "They're afraid," Lieutenant Morrison said quietly beside her. Chen nodded. "They should be." 6 months had passed since the battle. In that time, Earth had changed more than in the previous century combined. The desert facility where the void render had fallen was gone, replaced by an immense interstellar hub, part research city, part diplomatic nexus. Humans and aliens now walked the same corridors, argued in shared conference rooms, and worked side by side on technologies that defied every old classification. The Zephyrans arrived first. A delegation, unarmed and unmistakably humbled, requested formal contact. When Chen met their lead diplomat, she saw no arrogance, only exhaustion. "For 10,000 years, the Zephyran said, we believed intelligence followed a single path: logic, optimization, control. We conquered because we were efficient." He paused, mandibles tightening. "We were wrong. They did not ask for forgiveness. They asked to learn." They were not alone. The Bioform Collective followed, their living ships pulsing faintly with sickly light. For centuries, they had battled a genetic collapse that no calculation could cure. Human researchers working alongside composers and visual artists reframed the problem, not as an enemy to be destroyed, but as a system seeking harmony. The solution took 3 weeks. The machine minds of Proxima came next. Perfect, recursive intelligences trapped in self-improving loops they could no longer escape. Human philosophers and psychologists helped them understand a concept that defied their core programming. Growth required imperfection. Even the ancient archivists, beings older than most stars, came with a confession. They had accumulated knowledge for millions of years, yet lacked wisdom. Data without creativity, their representative admitted, is just storage. Humanity did not rule the galaxy. It rewired it. On Terra's hammer, Phoenix watched it all unfold. The AI's form had evolved beyond its original structure, now a shifting hybrid of human intuition and alien computation. Where once it froze at paradox, it now explored uncertainty with something like curiosity. "You have changed them," Phoenix said to Chen, as they observed a joint human-alien research team testing a new propulsion system. "We changed ourselves first," Chen replied. The greatest transformation, however, was not diplomatic. It was technological. Human-alien crews began constructing a new generation of ships, vessels that combined the best of every species' strengths. They were faster, safer, and capable of navigating space-time without tearing it apart. More importantly, they were adaptable. These ships did not demand perfect pilots. They learned with them. When Dr. Tanaka transmitted the first successful test results of a drive capable of crossing interstellar distances in hours rather than months, Chen understood the implications instantly. "This ends isolation," she said softly. Phoenix nodded. "It ends dominance as well." Not everyone was ready for that truth. Deep within unexplored regions of space, something watched. Something that had no emotion to confuse it, no intuition to betray it. A civilization that had learned to imitate, not logic, not creativity, but adaptation itself. Phoenix detected the anomaly first. "Sarah," it said carefully, "the galaxy has learned what humans are." Chen turned toward the stars beyond the viewport. "And now?" she asked. "And now something else is learning how to become you." The warning hung between them, heavy but not fearful, because humanity had already made its choice. Weeks later, a new vessel departed Earth orbit. Its design was unlike anything seen before. Curves and angles borrowed from 6 different species, systems guided by both algorithm and instinct. On its hull, written in a dozen languages, was a single name: Harmony's Edge. Its mission was not conquest. It was exploration. As the ship vanished into folded space, Chen watched from Terra's hammer, a quiet smile touching her lips. Humanity had begun this journey by inheriting alien garbage, a broken weapon discarded by minds that could not accept chaos. They had turned it into a bridge between ways of thinking, a bridge between civilizations. The universe, she realized, was far more interesting when intelligence was allowed to be messy. And somewhere out there, beyond known stars and familiar fears, the next challenge was already taking shape. This time, humanity would not face it alone.